This meeting is now called to order. For those around the table, please turn on your microphone when speaking. For those participating via Zoom, please state your name when making a comment or asking a question. The MAG public comment process allows members of the public to comment on items that fall within MAG's jurisdiction. If you would like to comment at today's meeting, please complete the request to speak form. MAG staff can assist with any questions you may have. If you've parked in the garage, a validation stamp is available on the counter. If you purchased a transit ticket to come to the meeting, please see staff for a return ticket. Hearing assisted devices are available from MAG staff. We will now begin the meeting with a roll call of all members.
Thank you, Chair. I will begin roll call by going in order of agency. Earl Radulich.
Here.
Thank you. Tiffany Halperin. Raquel Schatz.
Present.
Thank you. Ward Stanford. Elaine Mariole. Anissa Gerard.
Here.
Thank you. Hazakias Roja. Jose Macias.
Present.
Thank you. Justin Weldy.
Present.
Thank you. Stephanie Bubenheim.
Present.
Thank you. Wayne Smith.
Here.
Thank you. Randy Proch. Reed Kempton. Garrett Topham. Thank you. Amy Rebinar.
Here.
Thank you. John Beltran.
Here.
Thank you. Nick Klimick.
Present.
Thank you. Devin Price, proxy for Nina Arredondo.
I'm here.
Thank you. Susan Konkalu.
Here.
Thank you. Les Johnson.
Present.
Thank you. Kiran Guntupalli, proxy for Stephen Chang.
Here.
Thank you. Mitchell Willard, proxy for Chase Wallman.
Present.
Thank you. Aaron Herrera, proxy for Gabriel Elias. Marty Zeke. Grant Anderson. Patrick Sage.
Present.
Thank you. Have I missed any members?
Hi, this is Ezekiel Rocha with City of Chandler. I joined in a little bit later.
Gotcha.
And Ward Stanford with the city of Annandale.
Ward Stanford, got you. Okay. Chair, quorum has been established.
Thank you, Bertie. Our next item is the call to the audience. This is the opportunity for the public to comment on items that fall under MAG's jurisdiction that are not on the agenda, informational items, or items on the agenda for discussion and not for action. 15 minutes will be provided for the call to the audience unless the chair requests an exception to this limit. I have received no request to speak for the call to the audience. MAG also provides the opportunity for members of the public to submit written comments via the MAG website. Any comments received 2 hours prior to the meeting have been shared with the committee members in advance of the meeting for consideration and will be included in the formal meeting minutes. Staff, have we received any online comments for the call to the audience?
Thank you, Chair. We have received no written comments for the call to the audience.
Thank you, Bertie. We will proceed to item number 3, This item is on the agenda for information and will be presented by Kay Borg, Principal Planner. It's the MAG staff report.
Thank you, Chair. Can you, next slide, please? First, I'd like to welcome 2 new members to the committee. That's Raquel Schatz, project engineer with the City of Apache Junction, and she is replacing Urias. And then we have Nick Klimek, Principal Planner from the City of Phoenix, and he is replacing Kara Nasser on the committee. So thank you very much for your participation. The next are just some updates on the community open house events happening this week for the Rio Reimagined Active Transportation Study. These are community open house events. Tonight we're meeting at ASU for the Eastern Corridor. Next is May 20th. We'll be covering the Western Corridor out in City of Avondale. And then meeting in Phoenix for the Central Corridor results. So if you can make it, that would be wonderful. If you have any questions, just get in touch with me after the meeting. And then also some upcoming community open house events for the active transportation plan. These are the enhanced engagement open house events that the city or that MAG is conducting. Those events are this week also, May 21st. Out in Peoria, and then 2 meetings in June up in the Southwest Valley and then in the Northeast Valley. So again, if you have questions about those events, please get in touch and I encourage you to attend. So that is the end of my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Kay. Our next item is approval of the meeting minutes. Does any member of the committee have questions on those minutes? Prior to the approval of the meeting minutes, there is an,
I think Susan,
Oh.
yeah, I was waiting.
pardon me, Member Conclu.
Hi, thank you. I just have one edit on item 7. Sorry, I don't have everything in front of me. Harrington Planning and Design was spelled with only 1 R and it should be 2 R's. It's really minor. I just wanted to make sure it was accurate. It's on page 11 in the packet and page 7 of the minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Conclu. Okay. Prior to approval of the meeting minutes, there is an opportunity for members of the public to comment. I've received no requests at this time for comments. Staff, have we received any online written comments for this item?
Thank you, Chair. We have received no online written comments for this agenda item.
Thank you, Bertie. Okay, so with that, I will ask if there is a motion to approve agenda item number 4.
Motion to approve from Fountain Hills.
Thank you, Committee Member Weldy. Do I have a second?
I'll second Almiraj Jose.
Thank you, Member Macias. We will have those participating in the meeting online take part in a voice vote by turning on their cameras and unmuting their audio. We need to see the faces of everyone to participate in the voice vote. For those who cannot or do not want to turn on their cameras, staff will conduct a roll call vote. Staff will only call on those virtual participants who did not turn on their camera. Members, please leave your cameras on until after the roll call vote so that staff can count the people's names whose cameras are not on. Okay. Can I have a voice vote for those in the room and those online? Those in favor, say aye.
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 Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Members, please leave your cameras on. Staff can take a roll call of the members participating virtually who did not turn on their cameras.
Looks like everyone had their camera on. Good to go.
Excellent. Thank you, members. We'll move on to item number 5, which is the Valley Metro Bus Network redesign update. This item is on the agenda for information and discussion, and will be presented by Michael Eshelman. Oh, very good. Is Aaron joining me today or is it?
No, it's just me.
Flying solo? Okay, great. Okay, Mike, thank you very much. Please, the floor is yours.
All right, outstanding. I know we're all excited here today to talk about the bus. I'm Mike Eshelman, the Deputy Chief of Service Planning at Valley Metro. I started just over a year ago, came from the Bay Area where we had a lot of really close working relationships with our cities and their active transportation staff, as well as advocates, to ensure that we had safe, regular access to our bus stops from our bus stops so that we were making it as easy as possible for folks to make decisions that weren't using their car. So, and I'm excited to talk about how kind of our bus network redesign fits into that overall framework of mobility for our communities. So we'll talk a little bit about background and progress of BNR, which is the bus network redesign, talk about some key findings we had, opportunities for improvement, connection with Prop 479, which is the new funding measure that has a significant portion funding transit through the Transit Life Cycle Program, as well as next steps. So what is the bus network redesign? So it's really just looking at the entire system and identifying where we're delivering service, where the demand is from our customers, from our riders, from our communities, and trying to get those two to match up a little bit better, as well as to address anything that we hear from our customers through public engagement. So what we did is we did a review of the efficiency and the effectiveness of our service to make best use of our resources. So are we putting the right amount of service in the right places at the right times to capture the right amount of customers? We're working right now through engagement with our city partners because they have a large say in what the transit network looks like. So each city has transit staff, and due to the way that service is funded and planned, all the cities have a real stake in what the networks look like for their cities because they pay for the level of service within each jurisdiction. We're looking to go back into the fall with public engagement on a draft network plan, where at that point we're going to get yelled at. And then we will take that feedback and we will incorporate it into a final plan, looking to bring it in front of our board in the spring. So why is this important? So when we think about effective and efficient, first, effective is the service convenient and reliable? If it is, then more people will ride transit. If more people ride transit, we have more fare revenue, and that means we can operate more transit. If we have an efficient network, it means that we're using the buses more efficiently. So there's less layover time, less deadhead time. We're putting the buses in the right places at the right time. We're using fewer resources to operate the same level of service. And that means we have lower operating expenses, which means we can operate more transit. So we did a lot of engagement in the fall, and we did some old things and we tried some new things. We held 4 in-person and 2 virtual open houses. I can confidently say those are the least successful part of this entire engagement effort. A lot of times when you do big tent open houses, there's no way you can have enough of them to be able to capture people at convenient times or in convenient places. But you also can't not do them, because if you go to your board and say we did public engagement and we had no big public meetings, it's not a great look. So what we did is we supplemented that with a lot of other work. So we held pop-up events all around the system at transit centers, at community-based events. We tried to go where people already were, ask them about their experiences. You know, there's nothing like getting the fresh perspective of a customer after they've gotten off a bus or while they're waiting for a bus that hasn't showed up, and they will tell you all about what their experience has been. We also held town hall meetings at all 7 bus garages throughout the region to talk to our bus operators and other personnel that help operate the bus to get their perspective, because it's really a multiplier effect. There's only, I think, 4 of us service planners at Valley Metro, and we have 1,200 bus operators. So they have a lot more eyes on the road. They can tell us a lot more about what they're seeing. We also did focus groups with segments of the population, you know, people with disabilities, people who have a stake in economic development, et cetera, to get a wide variety of different viewpoints of what works and what doesn't about the current bus network. From the survey, this is actually really great. We got 4,500 responses from our survey, which has allowed us to really get a lot of great insight that we can then drill down into at the individual line level, individual route level, as well as by individual jurisdiction. And we also got some non-riders in there too, so I can tell you a little bit about what folks told us they want and they need. So just where we are now, we only carry 60% of the people that we carried before the pandemic. That is a lot lower than our peers in other parts of the region. We only carry about 12 passengers. If a bus is in service for 1 hour, we only pick up 12 people. Peer agencies are closer to 22 passengers per hour. So we have a little bit of work to do. We also, if you ride the bus, if you look at our service, our network map, it's a big grid. So our buses tend to get on a big street, stay on that street for miles and miles and miles. The nice thing about a grid network is you can get pretty much anywhere you want by only transferring once. You go east-west one way, and then you go north-south, and you can get from where you are to where you want to go. That becomes difficult when you're only operating the service every 30 minutes. So we have a handful of routes that operate 15 minutes. A lot of the rest of the routes really only operate every 30 minutes, and we operate nothing worse than 30 minutes. So that means we're putting too much service in some places and not enough in others. It also means that when you're making a transfer, let's say at a major intersection between two routes that only operate every 30 minutes, if you miss that connection, you could be waiting 29 minutes in the heat, and it really discourages people from riding the bus. So where can we make sure that we can minimize the pain, what we would internally call the transfer pain point, but with customers so that we can get them to ride the service more. And we found that even though our whole system is set up for people to transfer, only 47% of riders transfer. So generally people are riding transit when they don't have to transfer. And so there's a whole untapped market. If we can make the transfers better, we can get people to ride more. We would expect in this type of network that more than 60% of passengers would transfer. So these are all really their drawbacks, but they're also opportunities. We learned also a lot about our customers. So 54% use the service every day. We also have this very interesting split. 40% have used the service for more than 10 years, but 32%, a third of folks have been using it for fewer than 3 years. So they've started using it since the pandemic, and they're using it. 62% don't have access to a vehicle, which tells us they rely on us. 66% have a household income below $50,000. We throw this last one in here, just, I don't know. 85% of people have a favorable perception of Valley Metro. So some of the things that we noticed in terms of immediate attention is we want to try to deliver more 15-minute frequency. We also want to make sure that the service is designed in an efficient and productive way so that we can maximize the level of service that we provide out for our customers, with keeping in mind that all of the cities that help fund Valley Metro have their own budget constraints and are very interested in not having us spend money that isn't productive or efficient. We want to make sure that we're improving reliability. So the reliability doesn't come so much in when you're planning your first trip. It's getting you to take your second and your third and your fourth. So if you have an unreliable experience on your first trip, you might not come back. We also want to make sure we're designing service around people, not accounting. So as I mentioned, there are a lot of, because of the way the service is funded and planned, there are a lot of routes, and you'll see it on the map, that all of a sudden will drop off at a boundary, at a jurisdictional boundary, so at a city limit, where there might be something that could draw that would draw more riders if we just went, a half mile or a mile into the next city. But that city has to agree to pay for that additional service over the city line. We also want to make sure that we're really involving the community in the planning process. This is not just our riders and the communities we serve, but it's also the cities that we serve as the Regional Public Transportation Agency. So this is what the network map looks like. It's where the ridership is. It might conform to, in your head, where the ridership is. We carry about 130,000 people every day. The train gets a lot of shine, but 100,000 people every day are riding the bus. And the larger the dots on this eye chart, the more people ride. You can see there's a real strong, the denser the area, the more riders. That's been true in my 20 years of experience planning transit, and it remains true here. 50% of our bus boardings are on 15 routes. And we think that actually there's an opportunity to not just make the whole network better, but if we can double down on some of those routes, we can get even more folks. This is what that looks like. So the lines in green make up about half of our riders, but only about 40% of the actual level of service. And then you can see as we go down further and further to the right, we have diminishing returns. So everything probably in the right third of this graph is carrying fewer than 500 people a day and using a lot of resources to do that. Whereas just the one route on the left probably amounts to all of those lines combined. And that, I believe, is a 29, so that's Thomas Road. This is what our ridership and our service levels look like by time of day. So the gray is the level of service we're providing, and the purple is what our ridership, I guess, graph looks like over time of day. So you see little peaks. The left is weekday. You see peaks in the morning and in the afternoon. This is actually a lot flatter than it was before the pandemic, as people's the way people move around has changed. The way people work has changed. So people are working 7 days a week. People are working not necessarily 8 to 5. So that's flattened a little bit than it was before the pandemic. You see where a lot of this activity is happening on the weekends. So on the weekends, we essentially pull all our buses out and keep them out all day at the same level and then pull them back in. Our ridership actually peaks in the early afternoon, so between 1 and 6 p.m. We think there's a missed opportunity there on the weekends where we could be providing a higher level of service. There's really only 1 or 2 orbit routes in Tempe that operate better, that operate 15 minutes on the weekends. Everything else is 30. And we saw our ridership drop off on the weekend drops off exactly. So we operate about 65% of the service level on weekends that we do on weekdays, and our ridership on the weekends is 65% of what it is on the weekdays. So we're getting the impression that people would ride more on the weekends if we just gave them more to ride. This is how much people use transit versus other modes based on their trip type. So purple is Valley Metro Transit, gray is everything else. There's a disproportionate number of people using this for work, and I can explain that in a second. There's also, from everywhere else I've worked, there's way fewer people using public transit for school. In part, that is ASU is the largest school here, and they actually operate their own shuttle service. So that takes away a lot of folks that would otherwise use transit. But one of the things is and we'll talk about travel time in a second, but the amount of time that you spent waiting for the bus, taking the bus, on the bus, et cetera, you're not going to do short trips if you have to wait 30 minutes for your next bus. You're going to go to an 8-hour workday. You're more likely to use transit for that 8-hour workday than you would be for a trip to a shopping mall where you're only going to be there for an hour, because you don't want to spend cumulatively an hour and a half in transit to do a 1-hour trip, right? So that's kind of one of the things that we've noticed. We also, this is what it looks like in terms of the amount of time. So once again, purple is transit, gray is everything else. You see people in the Phoenix metro region rarely take longer than 40 minutes to do any car trip. I'm just going to call the gray ones cars. Whereas you really can't take a transit trip under 40 minutes. It gets harder. Half the trips are essentially more than 40 minutes. So you know you're in for a long time on the bus. And so this is one of the things, reasons why we see lower penetration from the bus in terms of mode split among residents in the valley. What we heard from the survey is that folks want, so on the left is what's most important, and on the right is what they like the least in terms of our current service. So on the left, they want frequency, on-time performance, which is reliability, and then safety came up quite a bit. On the right, they want better amenities. They want reliability, on-time performance, and they want, they think the amenities aren't great. They think the reliability is not great, and they think the weekend service is not great. So those are some of the things that we're taking to heart. We're really not going to get into bus stop amenities a lot with bus network redesign. It's really service focused. And onboard safety has been a focus of our organization for the last few years, and we're continuing to focus on that, but it's not explicitly bus network redesign. What do non-riders want? They want frequency. They want more direct service with fewer transfers. And this also relates to shade heat protection. The best heat protection at a stop is to not have to wait very long at that stop. So reducing the amount of time you're spent waiting for the bus is the best way to get people to have a better time and have protection from shade, because there's AC on the bus. Bus stop amenities continue to show up. Some of the things that were least important from non-riders is evening service. And there's a subset, 10% just said, look, listen, buddy, I'm not going to ride. So those are some of the things that we picked up. Also, fares is usually something that I've seen higher up, and here bus fares are not particularly high in terms of priorities for non-riders. So when we look at opportunities for improvement, this is kind of a graphical illustration of kind of the pipeline of, or the funnel of how people fall out of riding transit. So first you have a grid network redesign, which forces transfers and you don't have enough frequency. So some people fall out, it's not frequent enough. And that continues on to the second one. When you're making transfers only every 30 minutes, people fall out. When you have unreliable service, more people fall out. And when you're your service is not, you're not even pulling your buses out of the gate, out of the garage, more people fall out. So this is just kind of this reverse funnel. I don't know, but this is just a quick and dirty illustration of what frequency is. So frequency is a bus every X minutes. So 60 minutes, bus every 60 minutes, really just Lifeline. You're only going to use that if you have to. 45 minutes, pretty similar. 30 minutes is where we're at. So the vast majority of our routes are running every 30 minutes. It's useful, but really you're still only using it if you have to. You have to rely on both the timetable and real-time applications. You're getting into 20 minutes, it's getting more useful, but when we think about transfers, if you have a bunch of stuff divisible by 30 and then you throw a 20 in there, it makes it harder to make those connections. You're going to miss a good number of those connections. 15 is really the sweet spot, and a lot of this is funding driven. You can't have everything be 15 and still cover the entire region. And then once we start to get into 10 and 5 minutes, it's just show and go. You just walk out of your house and the bus is there. You're not too worried about waiting that short of a period of time. Right now, 38% of our riders are on that frequent, so 15 minutes or better. The proposals that we're working on right now are seeking to boost that up to 48%. So we want to capture 48% of our folks, give 48% of our folks access to that 15-minute network. This is really inside baseball, but we have, the way we do everything here is mileage based. So when you're operating everything by mile, but everyone's paid by hour, you don't have a lot of incentive to actually make things more efficient. So if you speed up the service, you do the same number of miles with fewer hours, you're saving the contractor money, but you're not actually saving the region any money. It just gets really hard to make decisions to make the service more efficient. As we already mentioned, a lot of the decision making is based on a jurisdiction-based funding model, but people don't really live their lives based on their jurisdiction. Someone might live in Chandler and shop in Gilbert or Tempe or Mesa, et cetera, or the other way around, and they're not super cognizant of when they've crossed a line, but our network is extremely cognizant of where it draws or where it changes jurisdictional boundaries. Let's talk about 479, talking about inside baseball. So what we found, I guess the overall thing is since the initial 479 forecasts were created in 2020, there's been a pandemic, there's been global supply chain interruptions. There's been the whole part where people quit their jobs a lot, got new jobs that paid more. We've seen significant increase in wage rates, in inflation, in the cost of goods, the cost of doing business in general. And so what we've seen is that the actual amount of money allocated to the bus had to rise from 30% of the total pot to 45% of the pot. We've also seen significant additional use of our ADA services, which also squeezed the pot a bit. And what that's led to is that the formula allocation, which was essentially the service expansion promised as part of 479, has been pinched. This number is a little bit older. That number is, we're working on growing it actively as we work with the city managers from our member jurisdictions, but that's the challenge that we're facing. And so what we want to try to do is have discussions with bus network redesign, because ultimately our bus network is the single largest cost driver for everything. So it's the biggest chunk of money that we spend on anything within the TLCP. And having discussions about how it's structured, how we're delivering service can affect positively the amount of money in that formula pot. But we have to make tough decisions. So what we're going to do with this bus network redesign is say we're going to take some low performing service away here, add it into a high performing place. That as something we bring to the cities, is something we bring to the public, and that means tough conversations. I'm not joking when I said we're going to get yelled at in the fall. That's part of the point, is we want people to confront tough trade-offs so that we can see what the appetite is for making difficult decisions. If we can make some of these difficult decisions, then we can make a network that works better for more people. If we have more riders, then we have more fare revenue, and we can also reduce the cost, and that should result in a larger funding pot for the formula pot. In terms of next steps, I promise this is my last slide. We're working through engaging city staff and management through the summer. We're presenting that draft plan to the board in September, then opening it up to engagement in the fall, so into September through probably beginning of November. And then once again, bringing that plan to the board of directors in early 2027. And between fall 26 and early 2027, we'll be listening to taking everything we heard through public engagement and refining all of the proposals in the network plan. Hopefully implementation be about October 2027. And that's it.
Thank you, Michael. That's a great deal of information.
I realize this isn't, there's some inside baseball. I'm talking to a different audience. So.
No, that's a very informative. I know for municipalities that are affected, it's a very important process to work through. So we appreciate the effort that you guys are putting into it. Members, do we have any questions for Michael? I have a quick one.
Yep.
Just going back to the information on the surveys and ridership.
Mhm.
Can you talk a little bit about what value you guys receive out of the non-rider responses from the survey?
Yeah, absolutely. So the non-riders is thinking about how do we get people out of their cars, is kind of the elevator pitch. And it's nice in this case that a lot of it lines up really well with what our riders want. So if we do, that's the best case scenario. So if we do something good, and when I'm thinking about doing something good, it's adding weekday frequency and improving weekend frequency. If we do those things, we think we can get people out of their car, and we can get people to take some measure of trips. We're actively actually looking at our ridership right now at a more granular level to see if any of the oil price stuff has been trickling into the bus network. In April, we saw our ridership increase about 8% overall, which is good, solid. But we're keeping an eye on seeing if there's any particular areas or things that it's kind of popping up on.
Excellent. That's kind of what I was parsing out of that.
Yeah.
Those results did seem to resonate with what you would expect a rider to be looking for. So
Yeah, there's a really difficult situation where if your riders are saying, I want this, and the non-riders are saying, I want that, and then you have to make a Faustian bargain of which one are we going to do?
right, please the ones that
Yeah,
are
yeah,
lagging
yeah.
or try to appease the ones that
Yeah,
you want to
don't
bring on.
Dance with the one you came with or what? So yeah, I like to do something. I like to make the service as good as possible for our existing customers and have them ride more. And then if that is successful, it kind of creates a virtuous cycle where you're getting new riders in as well.
Fantastic. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll move on to agenda item 6, which is data-driven insights for enhancing active transportation planning, MAG non-motorized data collection and CV safety analytics. This item is on the agenda for information and discussion and will be presented by Wang Zhang, Transportation Data Manager, and Yongxiao Peng, Senior Modeler.
Thank you, Chair and members of the MAG Active Transportation Committee. Glad to be here to present this topic. Essentially, it's actually 2 topics. I'll be taking the first one and let my colleague Yongxiao to cover the next one regarding connected vehicle data application in terms of the safety analysis. We just want to be here to give you guys some coming up information and efforts regarding MAG's regional non-motorized data connection planning. So everybody is aware of this non-motorized traffic data is super critical for so many different applications. At most, it's bread and butter for lots of the active transportation planning work that we're doing here. And also, we recently found out that our safety analysis, particularly in order to address the vulnerable road users, is in really much data needs of such kind of non-motorized traffic data as well. Lots of the non-motorized traffic happening at the intersection level that touches our traffic operators at the cities and the counties and even ADOT, where they need to effectively manage the foot traffic through the intersections and smoothly and safely. So we need to potentially connect this kind of data and fit into that process. And the MAG itself as a regional, travel demand model, workshop. We also maintain, the bike models, which could be also very data hungry for this kind of non-motorized data sets. So we're trying to take care of this, non-motorized data needs and to serve for different kind of purposes. we're putting it on the screen right here. So first of all, just want to show you guys one slide that we dissected the crash report within our region over the last 5 years, and kind of show you some of the concerning trends regarding vulnerable road users. So over the last 10 years, for example, we've seen an increase of the VRU deaths in our region, unfortunately, by almost 50%. And there's also increase of pedestrian crashes. There's more pedestrian crashes happening to the darkness at night. Our, for example, VRU fatality rate is actually higher than national averages. And we have a very fast arterial network that carries lots of the fast traffic. And then there's a lot of the VRU struck, unfortunately, happening at the mid-block arterial crossings. So just want to show you some of the, concerning stats to kind of lead our discussion in the next. Why we need to connect more data. Why we need to focus our data connection in helping out in addressing our VRU analysis needs to improve our safety. So traditionally, that's how we obtain or connect the non-motorized data. I think this upcoming year in the 2026, which will potentially drag into the future years, is the second time of the MAX effort to address our regional non-motorized data needs. So the first time we did that in similar effort is in 2021 and 2022, about 4 to 5 years ago. Back then, we kind of work with entire committees and entire communities to come up with almost 500 locations. They are located at an intersection at community recreational paths, and even along some arterial bike lanes. And we went out to try different technologies. We use videos, we use tubes, we use radars, we use eco counter, whatever is available to help us gather the non-motorized traffic counts, such as pedestrian counts and bike counts. So that's 5 years ago. We learned lots of the valuable lessons from that. For example, first of all, it's really economic challenge to get this such a huge roadway network in terms of connecting, a big chunk of the non-motorized counts. And for example, if you want to really obtain the high quality of the non-motorized counts, video technology should be the go-to technology to be used. And, it works much better. You have the visual evidence. You can go back to audit and, to kind of validate the quality of the counts. But, counting traffic from the videos, so that needs us to go out to obtain and harness the videos first, which is a substantial effort, given we have such huge network as our interest. So this is how we did it in the last time, and we're thinking about it this time. How do we look at the different new innovative ways and leverage different kind of new technologies to help us to achieve this goal that can help us scale up our understanding of non-motorized traffic. So this is how we're going to design this new process of connecting data. So there used to be, we send our consultants, contractors to the designated locations to have them put up the cameras and count for a few hours, 13 hours a day or maybe a couple of days at most, and come back with really limited amount of the information regarding non-motorized traffic. Can we think about, is there any way we can, split the whole process into 3 different components by focus on just leveraging different kind of available video data sources together? Let's bring all those kind of data sources into our shop. We put a repository. We have tons of the videos with different duration, different timestamp, with different locations. And then let's have a specialized service providers to go through those video footages and to use the cutting edge, analytics to extract all the useful information from that video, not only for the non-motorized counts, but what about other performance metrics? What about the operational information at the intersection? What about at the intersection of with the safety concerns such as red running and the near miss information? As long as the video footage provides you with the evidence, there is a way we can run, holistically through certain analytics to extract those information, including non-motorized counts, into that. So that's how we're going to transition our traditional way of connecting non-motorized counts into this 3 modularized, 3 components all put together as a new process. So a little bit details of how we're going to do that. So we're going to identify and work with certain video analytics providers and have that set aside ready to go. And then we're going to try to fetch video sources from so many different sources. There could be the PTZ, CCTV camera operated by the cities, or channels through our RCN into MAC, or there could be like the dash cam cameras running live on the streets, connecting those informations. So we're going to be able to, look at all the available video sources, and then to overlay with where the location was still missing the video sources. That's where MAC is going to go out to send a contractor to connect the video sources. And then eventually we're building those kind of, all the possible sources, regardless it's available to us through a certain way, regardless it's going to be MAC's effort to go out to count it. We put everything together to cover the intersection we want to count, cover the mid-block crossing we want to count, and to cover the streets network we want to count. Essentially, this is how we're going to utilize the video analytics to process everything through into the matrix, into the data, into the information for potential applications. And then we will also take any available counts at intersection level. For example, nowadays, pretty much every intersection is being covered by any certain technologies within this region. So there's already some byproduct being produced by those technologies. They can provide you with turning movement counts, provide you with pedestrian crossing counts. So no need to analyze them video anymore. If the data is available, we will auto-pull them, centralize them, and put everything onto our cloud solution for the consumption. So that's kind of essentially our three components concept. But we still need to know where do we need the counts the most, right? So that's why we started to, we actually been working on that internally, just to look at intersections, look at the crashes, look at the crash rates. We identify certain locations. We must go out to have some good understanding of how the vulnerable road users are traveling through those locations. We look at the high crash side. We look at the high crash against the high volume low intersections. We look at the high crashes regarding the pedestrian and a high crash regarding the bikes. And we also need to achieve the regional balance to make sure we have understanding our non-motorized traffic conditions for all the jurisdictions within MAC boundaries, and to hopefully put everything together to serve as a comprehensive data information for all kinds of applications as we went through in the previous slide. So once again, if we focus on the intersection, we started from every intersection. We started to dive into more details by looking at those numbers, and then help us to go from the left to right to the most wanted the intersection we most wanted the data for. So that's kind of the until this slide. It's kind of what we've been working on, and we're putting together our consultants to go out and count it. But intersection may not be the only thing of our interest in terms of non-motorized counts. So in the next, I will let Yongzhao to talk about a particular use case we built on the connected vehicle data. Here's just one slide of information on what is this data about. So it's a new mobility data set from connected vehicle technologies. It covers about 5 to 7% of the traffic traveling on the road 24/7 in our regions. It's a high resolution vehicle trajectories that you can derive the safety related metrics from that to help us understand the driving patterns such as harsh braking and speeding. So the data can tell you where do those motorists tend to press the brake or tend to speeding traveling on our local streets. As you can see in this example on the right-hand side, this is one particular vehicle trajectory traveling through a particular mid-block pedestrian crossing. The number represents the speed, and as you can see, there's at a certain point, the speed drop from 38 miles per hour to 4 miles per hour within 3 seconds of the time. So it's really, really dangerous driving behaviors. So we're able to leverage this huge amount of the mobility data to help us understand which, for example, mid-block pedestrian crossing, we've seen more or less this type of the dangerous driving events. So that will be the second part of this presentation to be provided by Yongzhao later on. So exactly for the topic of using this data to identify those high-risk mid-block crossing has something to do with VR use. So our goal is, is try to develop, some predictive measurements to be more proactive in handling or in dealing with those kind of, issues with the safety. So when you see a record in the crash database, that's already a tragic. That's already happened in the past. Is there any other way we can be proactive in identifying those problematic high-risk zones and let agencies to go after that to effectively reduce the risks is what we're trying to do. So that's kind of my high level of this second topic in our presentation today. With that, I will transition to Yongzhao to let her give you a deep dive of this particular use case developed from the connected vehicle data for addressing the VRU at the Meatball Crossing.
Thank you, Wang. So during the process of planning this non-motorized data collection, we also conducted an analysis for the high-risk pedestrian crossing using the connected vehicle data. Before we go deep into the analysis, first I want to introduce the pedestrian crossing types by different singular management. So there are 5 different types in our region. Different types have different primary color, activization, and driver requirement. So now I will talk about how we select the pedestrian crossing for our analysis. We started with over 600 pedestrian crossing in our regions. We got this pedestrian crossing information from a product from a consultant called Ecopia. Based on this pedestrian crossing, we select only 198 pedestrian crossings for analysis. Those locations are only on the major arterials. So each location of the pedestrian crossing was mapped to the modeling network in our region. So basically, each location here will be represented by one link in our modeling network. Then for each link, we grab all the collected vehicle data for 6 weeks in October and November of 2025. Then we continue to crop the data within 500 feet. For each location, we grab the data within this buffer. Then we calculated 2 major measures. One is the prevailing speed. We use the 95th percentile. Another is the hash break point. So for each continuous 2 points, we calculate the acceleration rate based on the speed of the collected vehicle data. So then we identify those points with less than -7 mile per hour per second for the deceleration rate as the hash break points. Here is the final results. So this is only part of those locations results. So you can see the table shows the pedestrian crossing information with the calculated prevailing speed by mile per hour and the number of hash break points, and also the times of the number of hash break points for this location to the average of all the locations. In general, roughly 1 hash break event occurs for each location each week. Here is the number of hash break points displayed on the map. We identified 2 most dangerous locations. One is at the McDonald Drive in city of Scottsdale. Another is the location at the Lindsay Road in the town of Gilbert. So you can see here, the dots represent each hash break event. Although there's few points, but it is for 6 weeks, so it is still a rare event. The color of the point represents different speeds. So you can see few events still with very high speed, more than 20 mile per hour, which is very dangerous. So here is the example one showed earlier. So this is trajectory for one vehicle passing through this pedestrian crossing. The arrow means the location of the pedestrian crossing. So you can see the speed decreased very harsh when close to the pedestrian crossing. Here is another example at the McDonald Drive. So the speed decreased from 36 miles per hour to 15 miles per hour. Here is the number of hash break points we summarize by time of day for the most dangerous locations. So you can see during the daytime, almost every hour, you may expect the pedestrian, the hash break points. But this is for 6 weeks of data, keep in mind. So here is the time of day number of hash break ratio, which is in orange, compared with the time of the day factor for our regional arterial volume, the blue line. So in our regional arterial volume time of the day, you can see two obvious peak. One is AM peak, another is PM peak. Well, for the hash break points, we even have several peaks, even in the middle day, close to noon. So this is different from the volume time of day pattern. Here is the number of hash break points by day of the week. In general, the orange day of the week by hash break points is very similar to the pattern of the volume day of the week pattern. Although for some day like Monday and Tuesday, the ratio of the volume day of the week is lower than the hash break events ratio. So this is the end of this part for the collect vehicle analysis for the pedestrian crossing. Now I will turn back to Wang to summarize our presentation.
So I hope that kind of use case, open up your horizon in terms of how this new innovative way of, we can potentially leverage for understanding those high risk zones in terms of the pedestrian crossing at a meat block. We will continue to do that, and we will utilize the result from this analysis to help with our site selections that we think there is a need to go out to a certain meat block pedestrian crossing to put up the camera. If there's nothing available there, put up the camera to kind of visually record some evidence of the pedestrian crossing interacted with mobility, with automobile traffic, as well as to look at how does that understand the crossing activity, how does that clash with the vehicle traffic. So we'll do that, and then we will, like I said, continue to expand our video repository, have that ready for different kind of applications. It's not only just for the number of counts anymore, it's for everything now regarding the safety. And then, so have that information ready for certain type of consumptions, and we'll continue to hopefully develop more use case and applications based on new technologies and the mobility data set. I think the whole transition we are experiencing right now in terms of non-motorized traffic monitoring is that we're shifting from the short-term data connection to the long-duration continuous data connections. We are changing from just the count data file into the information can help us understand the pattern and the behaviors. And we want to be able to do more work with proactive way rather than reactive to what already happened. I think that concludes our presentation. Happy to take any questions, comments. Thank you very much.
Members, does anyone have questions for the presenters? Oh. Member Ratledge, you have a question?
Yeah, this is Earl Ratledge with Active Arizona. I just want to be clear on where the connected vehicle information is coming from. I know there's a number of ways that the whole connected vehicle process works. So are these mostly like government vehicles that are connected to the internet when they drive, or are they connecting to some type of infrastructure that's on the side of the roadway? How is that working?
Well, thank you, Chair and members of MAC ATC. So the data is generated by the vehicle that's traveling on the road. So think about you have 5 to 7% of the vehicle, which is about 140 to 170,000 vehicles per day in our region. Whenever they have their engine turned on, they start to report this kind of mobility data sets of their speed, heading directions, and geospatial locations as a signature to every 3 seconds of their location. So it's not generated by the government vehicle. It's not generated by the way that vehicle talking to any infrastructure. It's generated by the vehicle itself. So it's a very similar mechanism to the floating car rounds, where the data tend to be very, very limited in the past. And now it's just become available to us through a particular data vendor that we're able to, harness this kind of data from a large amount of the vehicles.
Well, that's great. I think this information is really insightful, and hopefully you can get some ideas on how to make things safer. I go through that section by Freestone Park on a regular basis, both in my car and on my bicycle, and it gets pretty hairy there sometimes.
Thank you.
Any other questions, members? I have one. Can you speak a little bit, and maybe I missed it in the presentation, how in the future local agencies can expect to access the results of these data collection studies and analytics in terms of our planning projects or site-specific design projects?
Yes, thank you, Chair and member of the MAC ATC for the questions. So all the data is currently being stored in a cloud-based solution that's powered by MS2. It's called non-motorized traffic counts database. I can definitely follow up with a link. For example, our last regional efforts of the data collection, all the data being connected, is available through there. We're continuing to leverage that solutions by putting more non-motorized count information onto that platform for different kind of consumptions.
Thank you. Great. Any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you very much. We'll move on to agenda item 7, which is the request for future agenda items. Are there any requests from the membership for an item on a future agenda?
This is Stephanie with Gilbert. I had one idea.
Go ahead, Stephanie. Thank you.
Yeah, I know that there was recently an ADA type presentation with maybe it was the Standards and Details Committee about the kind of the visually impaired tactile warning delineators of the different types. And I thought that would be an interesting and insightful presentation for this group to have.
That's a great idea. I'm sure Kay can look into getting somebody who can present on it. Kay?
Yeah, thank you, Chair, members of Active Transportation Committee. Yeah, I'll follow up with that committee and see if I can schedule that for our next meeting, either in June or in August.
Any other suggestions for future agenda items? Okay. Next, we will take comments from the committee. Are there any comments or announcements from the committee members?
Hi, Chair. This is Zacchaeus with the City of Chandler. It's more of a question that I've gotten for a few of the residents in Chandler. They really love the MAG bikeways map, but that one has not been updated in a while. And every time we hand out the old ones in our events, they always ask, hey, when are we getting the new one? So I always tell them, I'm gonna get back to Meg and I'll let you know. So I would like to know if there is any updates on when we can get printed maps, or if we are staying just with the virtual maps moving forward.
I'll let Kay take that one.
Thank you, Chair, members of the Active Transportation Committee. We do anticipate reprinting the map as we finish up the Regional Active Transportation Plan. Part of that effort was working with member agencies to update all the facilities that are on the map to bring them current. So once we have finished up that study, we'll be ready to go through that process of reprinting. So I imagine probably 2027, the winter of 2027.
Thank you, Kay and Chair.
Thank you, Kay. Do we have any other announcements from the membership? Member Conklin.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say Bike Month went very well. If for anybody that wasn't working on events, and then the Active Transportation Summit was amazing. And I hope we can do it all again next year. Not sure if, well, I guess look at Valley Metro's page to see what the different events were, if you're not already aware of what it was, but let's do it again and ride our bikes. Thank you.
Excellent. Do we have any other announcements? Okay. Very good. Well, we will move on to adjournment. The next meeting of the Active Transportation Committee will be on Tuesday, June 16th, 2026 at 1 p.m. With no further business, today's meeting is adjourned. Thank you, members.
Thank you.